afternoon, everyone. Can we assemble? Welcome to the Manhattan Property Management Town Hall meeting. My name is Sheila Pinckney, Borough Director. Yuka Buskett is the Director for Community Operations for Manhattan. She's not here today. She's on vacation, so I'm also going to do her portion. Before we begin the meeting, we have interpreters available in Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. They're going to come up now. They're going to introduce themselves and explain, the wireless interpretation that they have. So at this time, I'd like the interpreters to introduce themselves.
Buenas tardes, tenemos servicio de interpretación disponible en idioma español. Aquellas personas que deseen escuchar la presentación en su idioma, por favor acérquense a la mesa que está a mi mano derecha hacia el fondo. Le entregaremos uno de estos aparatos para que puedan escuchar la presentación. Muchísimas gracias.
各位午安，我们今天现场会为大家提供国语的同声翻译。如果有需要的话，请到后面的桌子上领取耳机，谢谢。
Добрый день. Если вам нужен перевод этой презентации на русский язык, получите, пожалуйста, наушники у стола переводчика. Спасибо.
Sign language interpreter. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge all the resident association presidents that are in attendance also. We have Ms. Ruby Kitchen from King Towers, Ms. Ann Morris from Manhattanville. We have Lorraine Brown. We have Barbara G. Barber from Drew Hamilton, John Johnson from Mott Haven, Ethel Velez from Johnson Houses, Gloria Wright from Taft Houses, Diana Blackwell from Fred Samuels Houses, Barbara Williams from Polo Grounds, Rose Bergen from Isaacs, and Bertie Glenn from Jackie Robinson. Did I leave any resident association presidents out? Thank you for your attendance. Excuse me? Oh, she's not on here. Ms. Velasquez, sorry, from Clinton Houses. Okay. We also have NYCHA staff around the room at tables. We have the property management table over here to your left-hand side. If you have any resident complaints for any conditions in your apartment or anything, you can go over to that table. We have 3 staff members over there. Can all the NYCHA staff raise your hands in the back, please? Thank you. At the tables. So we have tables all around the room. And I'd also like to thank the NYPD for their presence. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Deidre Gilliard. Ms. Gilliard?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd also like to welcome at this time Councilmember Rosie Mendez. Thank you for your presence here today as well. As Ms. Pinckney said, my name is Deidre Gilliard. I am the Interim Executive Vice President for Community Programs and Development at the New York City Housing Authority, and it is my pleasure to serve as the moderator at Manhattan's Town Hall meeting. So, why are we here? In accordance with Section 5A of the United States Housing Act of 1937, as amended, housing authorities are required to develop, with review and input from residents and the general public, an annual plan that outlines its priorities for the upcoming year. As mandated, NYCHA has developed a draft agency plan for fiscal year 2015. In order to facilitate comments, the authority is holding 6 annual plan town hall meetings during the month of June. Every resident should have received a letter from the general manager with the annual plan notice in their recent rent bill. Flyers were also posted in every building, senior and community center, and management offices. The flyers were also translated into Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. The fiscal year 2015 draft plan and significant amendment to the fiscal year 2014 plan were made available on May 30th, 2014 for public inspection at NYCHA's principal office at 250 Broadway, on NYCHA's website, at each public housing development management office, at all community operations, management, and leased housing borough offices, and at 9 designated community centers. The draft plan and the significant amendment to the fiscal year 2014 plan were also sent to all Resident Advisory Board, or RAB delegates and alternates, to each Resident Association president and Section 8 RAB representatives. In addition, NYCHA encourages residents, advocates, and the public to provide written comments on the draft plan for fiscal year 2015 and the significant amendment to the fiscal year 2014 plan. The comments will be accepted via fax, through the mail, and collected at each of our town halls. In an attempt to accurately reflect NYCHA's most critical priorities and needs, the draft plan is an evolving document. The purpose of this town hall meeting today is to provide a venue where residents and the public are invited to comment on the draft plan and the significant amendment. NYCHA staff will make brief presentations on the topics listed on the screen. Can we go to that? Let's go to the topics. Next slide, Nick. Keep going, please. There we are. There will then be an open mic for questions and comments. Please complete a speaker slip if you would like to make a comment on the plan or have any questions. So again, the topics for this evening are maintenance and repairs, eligibility, selection and admissions, financial resources, and capital projects. Let's go over the meeting guidelines, which I think was a couple of slides back. We hope that as many people as possible will have an opportunity to express their comments. So before we begin, let's go over the following ground rules. The passing out of materials, photo taking, and video recordings are not allowed. However, a general information station is available where leaflets and flyers may be displayed. If you have a particular personal issue pertaining to your apartment, we have property management staff available right outside to address your concerns. Additionally, resource tables have been set up outside with information so that at the end of the meeting, you can pick up information on that which may be of interest to you, including resident economic empowerment and sustainability, fair housing, family services, citywide programs. Presenting today are Brian Clark, who will talk about maintenance repairs, eligibility, and admissions. Georgiana, I'm going to mispronounce your name, Georgiana. Okoruji, close enough. From Financial Resources, Anne-Marie Flatley is going to take us through our flat rent policy, and Ray Ribeiro will discuss capital projects. So the next speaker that you'll hear from is Brian Clark from our Operations Department.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am indeed Brian Clark, Vice President of Operations for Support Services. The areas where I work within the Housing Authority are our elevator program, Emergency Service Department, Applications Department, and various other special projects and initiatives. So as Deidre said before, I'm here today to talk about two topics, maintenance and repair, and then our admissions and eligibility criteria. So let's start off with the first one, maintenance and repair. And as Deidre said, this is an opportunity for us to present our annual plan and review major initiatives. And I'm sure everybody is familiar with our commitment to reduce our work order backlog. So I'm going to go through a series of slides. There's going to be 5 slides. It's going to have some high-level figures. It'll be authority-wide, and then we're going to dive down a little bit deeper just into Manhattan and see how we're doing in Manhattan, and then look at some specific types of work orders. So the first slide here today is overall open work orders within the agency. And so you can see the dates working down along the left. Well, that's actually, no, not the dates. I'm sorry, I have the wrong slide up there. Okay. So this is the outstanding work order status. So if you look all the way to the left in that high green bar, last April, okay, a little bit more than a year ago, we had over 274,000 open work orders. And right now, well, in May here, we have about 78,000 open work orders. And this is actually something we review every day. And so today, we're right around 79,000 work orders. So as you can see, there is a tremendous amount of progress in the past year in reducing our open work orders, a reduction of over 70%. But we still have a ways to go and a lot of opportunity for improvement. So I'd like to go to the next slide. Okay, and our next slide, what I'm showing here is how we're doing with our service level. And what our service level is it's a statistical figure. It's a combination of how old our closed work orders, our open work orders are, and how long it took us to close work orders at any particular point in time. So this is a performance indicator we use to see how we're overall doing. And so with this table, you can see we have dates down the rows, and then across the columns, we have our different labor titles, skill trades, and as well as some vendor information. So if we look at the first column, it's maintenance, and you can see right around a year ago in July, we were at 108 days. So that's 108 days is that unit of measure for our service level. And right now, overall in the Housing Authority, we're right around 4 days. So once again, a tremendous amount of improvement. And then if you look at our skilled trades, okay, and this combines also our work order, our work orders that are completed by vendors. So skilled trades includes plasterers, painters, roofers, exterminators, as well as vendor work orders. And the particular type of vendor work orders that we contract out are paint and floor tile. And you can see about a year ago, 257 days, and now we're down to 109 days, which is still a lengthy period of time. Our goals overall for maintenance are 7 days, and for more complex repairs, 15 days for our service levels. So you can see that we have we're doing well with maintenance, but we have a lot of room for improvement with certainly with our skilled trade work orders. But if we take the vendor work orders out and we just look at skilled trades, overall we're down to about 40 days. And then if you look at particular trades, carpentry, we're down to 52. Plastering, we're at 88. Painting, we're at 53. Plumbing, we're at 28. And exterminators, we're right around 4 days, 3.8 days. Now, the column all the way over to the right is for our vendors. And as I said, this is predominantly paint and floor tile work that we contract out to vendors. And a year ago it was 525 days, and we're down to 320 days. So once again, real opportunity, an area that we can improve. We've improved in the last year, but we still have a long way to go. And this year we got a big shot in the arm, a lot of help from the de Blasio administration in keeping the monies that we would normally pay NYPD, about $52 million, we're keeping within the Housing Authority to really focus on these particular work orders. So you should see a big improvement in this area in a short amount of time. So with that decision, I think we should have a little bit of applause from everybody out there, right? So let's go to the next slide. So this slide here, we're actually looking at, in particular, our boroughs. So we have our property management departments pretty much grouped into geographical areas. with the exception of our mixed finance program. We've pulled them out and kind of report them separate. So right in the middle there, you can see the highlighted row, and that's Manhattan, okay? And so at maintenance, overall, we're at 5.4. Skill trade, we're at 175.9. So this is an area that we really need to focus on in Manhattan here. Skill trades, we take out the vendors, we're at 46, which is pretty close in range to the way we're doing throughout the rest of the housing authority. Moving across at carpentry, we're at 74 days, plastering 55 days, painting 72 days, plumbing 35, exterminator 3.6, and then vendor 487. So we can see improvement, but still there's an opportunity for us to certainly improve more, and we plan to continue to do that. So next time I'm up here speaking to you, hopefully I'll have be giving you a whole lot more good news. So let's move to the next slide. So here we're looking at specific types of work orders, and these are particularly problematic work orders. These are leaks, mildew, intercoms, and compactors. Those are our interior compactors that are within our buildings where we compact the garbage prior to putting it out for sanitation pickup. And once again, shows improvement in these areas. Leaks last April, a year ago April, was 105 days. Right now we're right around 4 days. Mildew, we're at 5 days. Intercoms, 7 days, and compactors, 3 days. So we're doing pretty good in these key sensitive areas. And if we move to the next slide. And so once again, we want to look specifically at Manhattan, and you can see that for leaks, we're at 4 days, mildew 4.8 days, intercoms right around 8 days, and compactors right around 4 days. Okay? So with that, that's the review for maintenance and repair. And what I'd like to do is to move on to the next topic I'm going to discuss with you today, and that's our admissions and eligibility criteria. So this is a significant amendment to last year's plan. So today is an opportunity, certainly, for you to comment on this. And what I'm going to be presenting to you today is a significant change to our admissions criteria. And in particular, we're going to look at homeless families. But I want to put things in perspective before I go into the details. So right now, there are over 50,000 families using our homeless shelter system. This is a combination. What has really driven up this number is a combination of a rise in cost of living, a rise in our rents in New York City, combined with wages staying relatively flat. And I think that's something everybody can identify with. And so with these 50,000 families that are using shelters, there's about, the 50,000 individuals using shelters, there's about 10,000 families using these shelters with 20,000 children. And so right now it's summer, school's out, but during the school year, these children were coming back from school and going home to the shelter. Obviously, 50,000 people using the homeless shelter system is a crisis here for New York City. And the city is determined to improve this situation and is looking at all available resources, to address this, issue. And New York City Housing Authority is no exception. We're one of the resources. And what we are proposing doing is, back in 2004, homeless families had the highest priority, for public housing. Our highest need-based priority was N0, and there was a decision made back then to move it to N4, which is certainly a less of a priority. And what we are proposing to do is to move it back to the N0 priority. Once again, give it the highest priority for our need-based applicants, and then also creating a priority for working families homeless as well. So there'll be two significant changes to our plan. That's going from N4 to N0 for need-based applicants, and creating the homeless family priority for applicants as well. If we can go to the next slide. Also, right now in our Section 8 program, homeless families have the highest priority, so there's no change that we have to do to our plan. But in particular, NYCHA has actually Section 8 apartment units, and we're going to focus, these are in our LLC-1 and LLC-2 developments. These are the former city and state developments. We refer to them as our mixed finance program. And so we're going to really focus these units and where we can, where people qualify, place homeless referrals from the Department of Homeless Services, in these units. And then the other thing is that our LLC-2 units actually don't receive any subsidy right now. They don't receive any federal subsidy right now. And so our vacant units there, we are going to use in this program, and it'll actually bring in subsidy, much needed subsidy for the Housing Authority. So if we can go to the next slide. So, the homeless situation isn't, specific to New York City. It's actually throughout the country. What we're proposing to do is something that HUD is recommending to all public housing authorities, to see what we can do to help with the homeless situation. And actually, our plan aligns nicely with what HUD wants to do, and also with what the Obama administration wants to do with this homeless problem. Can we move to the next slide? So the impact that this proposal will have to public housing tenants is that it shouldn't have any impact to our transfer program. Those units, the same number of units that would be available for transfers, will not change based on this. So still 3 out of every 5 vacant units based on our tenant selection and assignment plan will still be available to transfers. Homeless referrals from the Department of Homeless Services will still have to go through same criminal background check that all our families have to go through. And also, the city is going to be providing supportive services for these families after a successful rental. We really want these families to have a successful tenancy, and we know that some of these families need a helping hand, and so the city is going to offer supportive services to every one of these families who rents up with the Housing Authority. Can we go to the next slide? So as I said, this is a significant amendment to the 2014 plan. It's an opportunity today and I encourage folks that have any questions certainly to pose them today, but also if they want to be supportive or if you have concerns with the proposal, please go on record today, or you can submit it in writing. The actual public hearing is July 24th. After the hearing, the proposal with all the comments from the public will be submitted to HUD for review, and then HUD will make determination on the proposal. If the proposal is successful, then it would go into effect probably sometime in September. Okay? So that's the presentation on the 2 subjects I wanted to review with you today. And so what I'd like to do is to call up Georgiana to the podium to give you an overview on how we're doing with our finances. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Georgiana Koroji. I'm the Deputy Director from Budget Department, and I'm here to give you an overview of a budget. Okay, what you see here represents the funding loss of about $1 billion for the past 13 years. The arrow, the blue shaded light shows you how much we received, and on top you would see what NYCHA was eligible to get. So what happens here is Congress appropriates funds, and every PHA submits their operation and maintenance costs. So if what Congress appropriates is not enough, then HUD applies a proration to make sure that every PHA gets something. So this is why NYCHA is actually not getting enough to fund what we need to fund. Next. So in 2013 of December, the board adopted a budget of $281 million. And of that 281, 191 is public housing, Section 8 is 90. And the revenue from operation is the rental income. Other revenue is from HUD, the funding that we get from HUD. Personal services is a salary to NYCHA staff to pay for the salaries. OTPS other is your contract, your supplies, your local cafes, and petty cash. Can you go to the next slide? So this shows you our first quarter reforecast. When we reforecast, you can see that the revenue from operation stays the same. Other revenue, we got more because when we adopted the budget, we adopted with a 77% proration, but HUD in turn funded us with 89% proration, so we got extra more, and that's how our deficit went from the 191 to 77. And if you look at the Section 8 area, Section 8 funds itself. HUD would always fund us if we have a shortfall. Next. The Capital Fund Financing Program, we usually receive, for 2014, we got 296 for capital, and now we have we issued $500 million to take care of the modernization at 39 development. The unfunded public housing, we have about 5,138 public housing unfunded. As of today, we've converted about 3,300 units to Section 8 so that we can receive more funds. Thank you. I'd like to call up on Anna Marie Flatley.
Good afternoon. My name is Anne Marie Flatley, and I'm the Director of NYCHA's Research and Management Analysis Department. I'm here to speak to you this afternoon about NYCHA's flat rent policy. NYCHA's flat rent policy is going to impact about a little less than 25%, or one quarter of NYCHA's families. The flat rent is the maximum rent that is charged in NYCHA for public housing. Most families, about 75%, pay what's called the Brooke Amendment rent or the income-based rent, which is no more than 30% of your income for rent. So on January 17th of this year, President Obama signed into law what was called the 2014 Omnibus Appropriations Act. And that act was funding the federal government programs from January through about September. Within the act was what's called Section 210 of the law. And this changed or requires public housing authorities to change how we charge or how flat rents are determined. So Congress and HUD are now telling public housing authorities flat rents have to be set at a minimum of what's called fair market rent. Fair market rent is typically not used in the public housing program, it's used in the Section 8 program. It's a rent that's set by HUD and it's set for cities. So for example, fair market rent is set by HUD for all of New York City. It's the maximum rent that will be used in the Section 8 program. We now have to tie our rents to that rent level. Within the act was also a requirement that housing authorities were to come into compliance by January 1st, and HUD told housing authorities that no one's rent can go up by more than 35% in a single year, which is actually quite large. However, even though there will be these changes in the flat rent, the income-based rents still stay into effect. So no one will be paying more than 30% of their income for rent. Can we go to the next slide? So that law was changed in about January, and it took until May for HUD itself to actually release the guidance or directions to housing authorities about how we're to comply. So again, the guidance that was released on May 20th stated again that housing authorities are to charge a minimum of 80% of this fair market rent for their flat rent, but it was actually giving housing authorities more time to comply. We had to release a significant amendment by June 1st stating that we'd be in compliance. That was done on May 30th. It also required that housing authorities start charging these new rents by October 31st. So these will be going into effect in the fourth quarter. But they are giving us, HUD is giving housing authorities more time to comply. So instead of doing a 35% rent increase in 1 year, we can stretch the increases over 3 years, which we intend to do. So the housing authority, we had 3 different options when we were looking at this law. We could do the HUD mandate, which was increase rents 35%, which would be incredibly burdensome for most households. Or we can do an even split over the 3 years. Again, it's about 20%, which is still high. What we decided to do is to take a more conservative approach, and the rent increase we're going to be doing is what was originally mentioned in the past 2 annual plans, which is a little less, or it's about 10% increase. What we've been doing over the past number of months is working with other housing authorities, with other industry groups, as well as with the de Blasio administration, because we intend to ask HUD, instead of giving housing authorities 3 years, let's spread it out over 5 years, which would be much more manageable for people to handle. So can we go to the next slide? All this information, by the way, is available online in the multiple languages on NYCHA's website. What this chart shows in yellow is the rents that HUD, the maximum rents that HUD would like NYCHA to charge. What we've done is we have 4 different income bands. So people that are in the lower income levels will be getting a much smaller rent increase of about 10%, which averages about $65. And then the households that are in the upper incomes are actually in compliance with the law. So I will be available. Again, my name is Anne Marie Flatley, the Director of Research, and I will be available throughout the meeting and after the meeting if you'd like to come up to talk to me about your rent situation or your household situation, and I can explain to you, probably for your particular household, how you'll be impacted. We are working on putting a rent calculator online so that you can plug in what your family's income is, your bedroom size, number of people in the household, to give an estimate of how you could possibly be impacted with this. But I do want to say again that we are working with other housing authorities, and we will be working with HUD to extend the time frame for the rent increases. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ray Ribeiro from Capital.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Ribeiro. I'm the Executive Vice President for Capital Projects, and I'm going to be going over where we stand with regards to capital projects. In CPD, as we call it, we are responsible ultimately for taking projects from funding through an engineering design, through construction, and ultimately delivering on the major construction projects to improve our properties. In several different categories. One of the categories of work that we are responsible for in CPD is the CCTV layered access program, and that is one of the areas that we were quite successful in 2013. We completed work on CCTVs and layered access at 84 of 85 developments that had been funded in previous years. All of that equates to about 4,000 cameras and about $45 million of work that was completed at the end of last year. The plan for moving forward, there is, as you may know, $27 million of remaining City Council funding from the fiscal year 13 and 14 allocations. All of that work, contracts are underway, contracts are in place. Some of the construction has already begun, and we are planning to complete all of that construction by the end of this calendar year. In addition, those contracts that are in place have been set up so that we can immediately begin work on any additional allocations that get made to CCTV and layered access, we presume when the capital budget becomes available later this summer. So in anticipation of that, those contracts have been set up to immediately start spending down on that money. You can go to the next slide. The next slide gives you a summary of what was accomplished in broader terms during 2013 with regards to capital spending and obligating. As you can see from the chart behind me, just over $400 million of projects were what we call obligated. And by obligated, we mean we entered into a contract to deliver those improvements. And then the next column, in terms of the expenditures, represents monies that were actually spent in delivering capital improvements to our developments. So we spent $420 million in 2013 in delivering capital projects, and you can see the general categories for where those obligations and expenditures occurred on that table. On the next slide, I'm sure many of you have seen this slide before. The intent of this slide is to demonstrate the declining capital funds that we receive each and every year to invest in our properties. As you can see, some 10 years or so ago, we would get over $400 million a year to invest in capital improvements in our buildings. Our buildings are getting older. All of the systems in those buildings are also getting older and in need of replacement. And as our buildings are getting older and actually need more capital to keep them in a state of good repair, you can see from the graph behind me, we're actually getting less. So this graph is actually moving in the wrong direction. And in the bottom part of that, in the lighter shade of blue, you can see if we had stayed at the $420 million mark that we had 10 years ago, not getting more money, simply maintaining that $420 million level, we would be sitting here today with over $1 billion of capital that we would have had to invest in our properties that we have not, because we didn't get that funding. On the next slide, you can see the latest capital plan, how it's broken down into the general categories. The major categories of interest on this slide are, of course, the federal bucket. That is generally where we get most of our capital funding from. And you can see on this chart, it's just over $1.4 billion over a 5-year period from the federal government, and that comes out to $280-ish million per year to invest in our portfolio. You can see on there the $500 million bond issuance. Georgie referred to that earlier. That was a bond issuance from the last quarter of 2013 to invest in facade and roof improvements to preserve the exteriors of our buildings. The idea there being preserve the buildings, keep the water out, so that we can try and keep the buildings in a state of good repair. Work on that bond has already begun. Several buildings have actually already been completed, and work is continuing at several others. The last category, and the biggest category on this particular chart, is what we refer to as disaster recovery. You can see on the chart there that we had estimated that the costs associated with Hurricane Sandy and the plans that we want to put in place to recover from Sandy, not just simply rebuild what was there before, but rebuild it in a way that's more resilient to future storms. The cost of that work is nearly $2 billion. That is work that is projected in our capital plan. We do not have that funding at this point, but those projects are included in the capital plan so that when we get the funding, we can immediately proceed with that work. The next chart gives you that same capital plan broken down into the different types of work that we can do. And I won't bore you and read the chart to you, but you can see all the different areas: elevators, heating, safety and security, and other types of projects. Obviously, the big one there is structural work and exterior work. The reason for that is twofold. One, the bond. It includes the bond in there, as I said, brick facades and roofs. And two, our plans for recovering from Hurricane Sandy include the construction of new elevated boiler rooms, and all of those costs are included in that category as well. So with regards to Hurricane Sandy, the list behind me are the developments that were significantly impacted as a result of Sandy. And what we've tried to do is put the developments into 4 different categories. Categories, 1 and 2 being locations where there was less severe damage, and as a result, the proposed work at those developments is significantly less. So for Category 1, we're going to be making repairs to those developments. Category 2's obviously making repairs, but simpler levels of resiliency at those developments. And then when you get into Category 3's and 4's, and I'm going to give you examples of them in a second, but the Category 3 and 4 locations are locations that are obviously going to make repairs, but in a way that makes them much, much more resilient, and in a way that takes significant design and construction efforts. And then the last category, same as Category 3, except there were several locations that we felt would benefit from what we call more advanced levels of resiliency or mitigation. So on the next few slides, I've actually given you a couple of just pictorials, right? A picture says 1,000 words of the categories that we're talking about, right? So the first slide, all of these pictures are pictures of simple repairs that would be made at the Category 1 locations, right? We would replace switchgear, we would replace different pumps that exist in the basement. On the next slide, just gives you a quick idea of some of the simpler things that we would do in addition to the repairs at the Category 2 locations. We would elevate that switchgear, we would put watertight enclosures, and you can see on the bottom left-hand side of the screen, we could actually put in floodgates in some areas to keep water out of basement areas or lobby areas to prevent the water from getting in and causing the damage. When you get to the next categories, the Category 3's and 4's, you start to get into the more advanced proposals where we would, as I said before, build a new boiler room on the campus, and it would blend into the other buildings on the campus, but it would be perhaps 2 or 3 stories high so that the boilers could be on an elevated floor. They could be on perhaps the 2nd floor. So if the development got flooded again, the boilers would not be underwater and could continue to run immediately after the water receded. Some additional developments, as I said before, could benefit from things like a combined heat and power, or in the picture that you see behind me, a new facade on the building that provides some exterior wall insulation, and that wall insulation would result in us, instead of having to replace 6 boilers, we could replace 6 boilers with 4, and reduce the cost of the repair, but then have long-term benefits associated with external wall insulation, not to mention eliminating the need for brick repairs and the like. So those are some of the types of projects that we propose doing under Sandy. We have a very specific, on the next slide, a very specific resident engagement outreach that's associated with Sandy, and there are several different components associated with it. Obviously, having town hall meetings like this, specifically for Sandy and what our plans are, as well as having similar type meetings with stakeholders, whether they be community-based organizations, elected officials, that sort of thing, to make sure that everybody understands where it is that we're going, what it is that we're planning to do. We feel it's very, very important for us moving forward that the residents be engaged in the day-to-day design of these projects. So we don't show up when we're building, we don't show up and start to build something without the residents know what's being built. We want the resident input all along in the process. And then, of course, as we do now, having participation in the construction kickoff so everybody knows what to expect from a construction perspective. And then the typical, in addition to meetings, having sort of mailings and widespread distribution of informational meetings. Similar to Sandy, you can actually advance the slide, please. Similar to our approach with Sandy, Capital Projects is responsible for putting together the technical part of our capital plan. And in the past, that has been based a great deal on our interaction with the folks from operations. It's been based on data that we have regarding work orders. It's been based on our physical needs assessment. But it's not been based enough on input from the residents. So one of the things that we are doing this year and actually getting ready to roll it out over the course of this summer into the fall is actually a number of meetings at each of the developments to not only discuss the funding that's available in the capital plan, to discuss what we have found during all of our physical needs assessments to be the need at a particular development, but to get that kind of information as well from the residents of the development in terms of what they believe is necessary and quite frankly to help us prioritize the needs at each of the developments. So with that, that's the presentation on capital projects. I am going to turn it back over to Deidre to finish us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, and all of the presenters. So now is our opportunity to hear from you. And we hope that as many people as possible will have an opportunity to express their comments. So before we begin, let's go over the following ground rules again. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker slip. They look like this, and Ms. Price, who is to my right, has them. So please raise your hand and she'll bring them over to you. When you begin to speak, the green light over at the clock to my right will begin to count down. When the yellow light is lit, it means that you should please start to conclude your comments. When the red light is turned on, your 3 minutes to provide comment are over. Again, a table has been set up for you to provide any written comments that you may have. Please speak only from the microphone that's in the center of the aisles because we would like to make sure that we are recording this public town hall meeting, and we want to make sure that we get all of your comments. Remember that we are here to hear comments on NYCHA's fiscal year 2014 plan, and we ask that any personal comments on or criticisms of or oral attacks on NYCHA personnel, any residents that are here, any other members of the public, we ask that you please refrain from those comments. I am the moderator for this evening's event again, and I will reserve the right to please ask you to leave this room should there be anything that is determined to be derogatory or vulgar. We are here to consider comments that are of concern to everyone, not issues or concerns that are only of a specific or single resident or your specific or apartment. Again, we will take those comments. There are NYCHA staff here to address any issues or concerns that you may have. We are really here, however, to hear about your comments to anything that was presented here today, anything in the draft annual plan. Again, we have general information tables outside where leaflets and flyers may be distributed. Please do not distribute them here. With that said, let's begin. Speaker number 1 is Assemblymember Robert Rodriguez, followed by speaker number 2, who is Xenia, I believe, Breaker from Marlborough Houses. Assemblymember Rodriguez.
Great, good afternoon, and I see a good number of tenants and tenant association presidents, so I'm glad we had such a great turnout. Some of the issues that we've been working on in the legislature have focused on the issues around scaffolding. And I think, many of the residents here know that we have had scaffolding up on a number of our developments for a long period of time, sometimes exceeding the amount of time that work has happened. So clearly, I've introduced legislation to address this, saying if we're not doing work in 6 months, maybe we need to take the scaffolds down. So I want folks to know that, but I also would like to hear a response from the NYCHA on what the plan is moving forward on how we're going to address the scaffolding issue, because we shouldn't have to resort to legislation to address these things. That's my first issue. The second issue that we've been working on is safety and security. And I know that you mentioned in the plan that 84 of the 85 that have been funded to date are completed, but that doesn't address the ones that may not be funded or what the plan may be moving forward to address CCTV and layered access. And clearly we want the state to be involved, but certainly the city and the federal government in terms of funding. What is our comprehensive plan for addressing that, not just as it impacts East Harlem, but as it impacts the system? So I just wanted to say thank you. Those are the things that we've been working on in our office. We have been working with NYCHA, so this gives them an opportunity to update you on what is happening. But I just wanted to also reach out to my tenants and let and tenant association presidents to let you know that as issues come up, please let us know. We happen to have more public housing in this area than anywhere else in one assembly district, so we want to keep working on these issues moving forward. Thank you.
Assemblyman, if I could just address both of your comments, actually. With regards to the sidewalk shed, couldn't agree more. There is an abundance of sidewalk shed at NYCHA Developments. That shed is there as required by the New York City Local Law 11, which when we do a facade inspection, if there are defects found in that facade, we are required within 48 hours to put sidewalk shed up to protect pedestrians in the area. The problem has been historically, because of lack of funding, because of our larger scale plan, some of that shed has stayed up for months and even years. We have put together a plan in place and already initiated, whereby by early part of next year, all of the sidewalk shed located in NYCHA Developments will be associated with an active construction project. There will be no more shed up at a location that does not have active construction. We've done that in a number of ways. We have a number of contracts that we've put in place that are attach basically the sidewalk shed installation to the actual repair that will cause the sidewalk shed to go away. In addition, you heard me reference the $500 million bond program. The focus on that bond program was on developments that had significant unsafes, as per the assessment that I described before, and an effort to remove the sidewalk shed. With regards to your comment on safety and security, obviously safety and security is a priority for NYCHA. As our chair has said quite often lately, everybody deserves to be safe in their home. The problem that we have is the limited funding and the extreme needs. We have $17 billion of need at our developments, and we have just over $2 billion of funding. It makes it very, very difficult to address all of the needs at all of our developments. I know Councilmember Mendez is here, and I would like to thank the City Council because they have been a big part of funding the safety and security measures that we've put in place to date. They're a big part of the safety measures that we are putting in place this year as well. We hope to continue that. We hope to invest as much money as possible in as many safety and security projects throughout NYCHA as possible.
Thank you, Assemblymember Ray. Ms. Xenia Breaker, I believe, from Marlborough Houses, and followed by Mrs. L. Brown, Section 8. Ms. Breaker? Mrs. L. Brown?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate GM House and the staff for the reduction of the backlog of work orders to 83.7%. There's a big difference. We spoke, they listened, and responded, and thank you. Now, I'm going to submit my comments for the public hearing in writing, so I won't discuss them at this time. But I want to say that I'm hopeful. The operative word today was improvement, and there's always room for improvement. And I have seen the improvement this year over last year. But what I'd like to ask at the public hearing on July 24th, that there be 2 sessions instead of 1. And that way the residents can be heard. Because some people work in the evening and we have a few people who are off during the day. So if they could provide 2 sessions, that would be beneficial. And my other suggestion would be that NYCHA staff have name tags so that we can associate the names with the letters and the emails and so forth, and we know with whom we're speaking. And lastly, I prefer the roundtable discussions that you've had in the past where staff has interacted with tenants, and we would talk about the problems and provide solutions, and then that would be addressed at that time. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with you this year to improve the quality of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Ruby Kitchen, speaker number. Okay, we'll have a microphone brought to you. Can someone please assist Ms. Kitchen? Ms. Kitchen will be followed by New York City Councilwoman Rosie Mendez.
My problem is that there still seems to be a total lack of respect and concern for residents. We usually get everything after the fact. We need to be included in whatever is going on through New York City Housing Authority. I don't know whether this is on your agenda or whatnot, but I'm concerned about our community centers. I was just told that the community centers will be open till 11 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock in the morning in some instances. I want to know what input did residents have in it? What will the police department be involved in it? What police department is going to oversee it? Will it be the PSA 5 or will it be the precinct police department, if any, to provide security? What is the guarantee that we will not be moving our gangs from outside to inside? We need to be involved and find out what these plans are, because at present, during your regular community hours, that we are not seeing our situation resolved. It seems to be an increase of teenagers, and there is no respect from teenagers to their staff, no respect from teenagers to the people in the community. So we need to sit down before this thing get out of hand, and then we come and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry is not enough. Let us be in on the beginning and save our children. If we don't save our children, it's the same children that's gonna get us.
Thank you for your comment, Mrs. Kitchen. I will respond to that. So, as you mentioned, there is a plan to keep community centers open for extended hours over the summer. And this plan was absolutely developed with residents. There was a meeting that we had probably 2 months ago with DYCD Cornerstone and resident association presidents. And at that time, funding was not available to have community centers open at all for evening programs during the summer. There was quite a bit of outrage from residents at that meeting, and they said, quite frankly, Ms. Kitchen, exactly what you said today, that we need to keep our youth safe, and that it was unconscionable, is a word that was used there, that we were considering not having community centers open for teens in the evening. And so at that meeting, DYCD, because again, it was a meeting with the DYCD Cornerstone providers, DYCD and the TAs who are in the developments where there's a Cornerstone program. And it was, I can get you the exact date, Ms. Kitchen, but you were at that meeting with us, and at that meeting we talked about this very thing. And at that meeting, DYCD actually was just looking to keep the centers open, 15 centers open. And what we have been able to do thanks in large part, and again, I think we need to give another round of applause to Councilmember Rosie Mendez, because she and her other council members are the reasons why, one, community centers are funded beyond today, and why there is funding available for us to have these extended hours programs. And so that was the work that we did. This was really born out of a need that the residents, including yourself, Ms. Kitchen, as you wisely mentioned today, that we needed to have these centers, or we'll talk about it offline, but to answer your question and so that everyone here is aware, the 70 cornerstone sites will absolutely be open until 11 p.m., 7 days a week during the summer months. And we're in conversations also to have the New York City Housing Authority operated community centers open for the same periods of time. And, thank you, residents, for your advocacy around that issue. So we will continue the conversation, Ms. Kitchen. Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Rosie Mendez, followed by Pearl Barkley, I believe, from CVH. Councilmember Mendez.
Thank you very much. On June 3rd at a city council hearing, I raised an objection to the fact that 4 out of the 5 boroughs were only having afternoon hearings and not any evening hearings. That tenants who work and tenants who were picking up their kids from school would not be able to come here. So I was promised an answer in the next day or two, and in fact I got an answer this past Saturday. And the answer was, we're extending the hours, and at this point there's only one hearing left, which was this one, and that this was extended from 3 to 5 to 3 to 6. Problem is, NYCHA didn't notify anybody that it extended the hours. When I spoke to Brian Honan, he explained to me this past Saturday that they were tweeting the information, which is great, but not everyone tweets. And moreover, I tweet and I looked and I said, up until now, 1 o'clock, it's only been saying 3 to 5. So, and I went back to look at 12 p.m., the last tweet said 3 to 5. At 1:13 p.m. on Saturday, 13 minutes after I got off the phone with Brian Honan, it then started saying 3 to 6. So this is not really a way to do resident engagement. I'm very disappointed in NYCHA, and I'm glad this is being live streamed. And I think if you want resident engagement, you have to reach out to the residents in multiple ways, and we need to have evening hearings. This is the first time in nearly 20 years of annual plan hearings that we don't have evening hearings, except in the borough of Brooklyn. So I'm also disappointed that I don't see any board members here. We have now an expanded board with residents, and all of a sudden the board members are not here. I think that leads people to believe that residents are not being engaged, particularly the resident members of the board. I wanted to talk about RAD and my concern about the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program and the 1,389 units that you've applied to put in RAD at Ocean Bay Apartments in the Rockaways. You're on a waiting list. I know that they're trying to expand it. It's a pilot. I don't know why this development was chosen, if there was any resident participation, if the elected officials were informed, and I think that that is very important to know how, if this pilot gets expanded, how developments are going to be chosen for this pilot project. Moving to Work, I understand Moving to Work Basic is coming out, and it just came out now, supposed to be for fiscal year 15. And there was a lot of problems with Moving to Work as conceptualized in 1996. The Moving to Work Basic may eliminate some of those objectionable parts, but I don't know because it just came out. And at the end of the day, we can talk about developing affordable housing on NYCHA land or anywhere else, but at the end of the day, we need to understand what's affordable and for how long, because that was the problem with the last administration. So it needs to be clearly delineated, because we need permanent affordable housing for people at all income levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. So we have noted your concerns and will certainly get back to you on RAD and move into work. Thank you. Pearl Barkley, am I pronouncing that right? Followed by Gloria Allen.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Although I put down one of the organizations that I'm involved with, I'm here primarily today as a resident of NYCHA. To pick up on what the last two speakers have said, I agree with them absolutely. And what it all boils down to is the lack of resident engagement. Now, today you've presented some wonderful things. It looks nice, it looks beautiful, but I would like to know what type of transparency are you going to have as these processes move forward for us to know if these things have actually been done? Because that seems to be a problem. I mean, you come up with facts and figures, but then you still talk to your neighbors and you hear the same old complaints. So is there any way that as you go through the process, we will know at each step what you are accomplishing and whether or not you are? And I also would like to add that the issue of resident engagement and the complaints that have been made shows a severe lack of resident engagement. And if you're not part of the tenant association, then where do you fit in as a resident to know what's going on and to have your input as well? Because you have some people that, for whatever reason, cannot attend tenant association meetings or desire not to. So what developments are you going to do to keep tenants engaged? And when we make comments, are they being taken seriously, or are they just being given for the sake of formality?
So thank you, Ms. You know, if I could ask Ray, just because I think Ray does a really good job, or you guys can certainly help inform some of the work we do around resident engagement. But I think when Ray was up here earlier, he talked about how we've enhanced resident engagement around our capital projects. So I'd just like Ray to kind of reiterate what he said earlier.
So as I alluded to, I think resident engagement is going to be a critical part for us moving forward. And to answer your question more directly, right? You asked the question, how are you going to know if we're doing this? If you don't hear from us, if you're not part of the capital planning process, then you know that we're not doing this. As I said before, if you're in one of those sandy locations, we have met with each of those developments already. We continue to have subsequent meetings with the residents in those developments. So if you live in one of those developments, you should have heard from us at this point. If not, please see me and I'll find out why. If you're in any of the other NYCHA developments, as I said, over the course of this summer into later this summer, we will be meeting with each development to try and get feedback from the residents as to priorities on the capital plan. So the effort is going to be there, and I would just say if for whatever reason if you don't know whether we're doing it or not, then we're obviously not getting it done. So I would simply just reach out to us and let us know, and we'll certainly figure out where the disconnect is. But the goal is to have significantly more resident engagement in everything that we do.
Thank you, and in follow-up to that, the Housing Authority is currently and had posted a position for a Director of Resident Engagement, and we have a department that is solely focused on resident engagement, which is, quite frankly, a new addition for us. We hadn't had that in ever, and so it's a department of about 50, 60 people, and the work of that department will be to ensure that residents across the board are engaged with you around NYCHA's critical priorities as well as your critical priorities. So thank you for your comment, Ms. Barkley. Gloria Allen, followed by Vieta Moore. Ms. Allen? Okay, we'll bring the mic to her.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Gloria Allen, and I'm a newly president of the Grant Houses. My concern is skilled trades, capital, and the capital funds, safety and security. Now, know that Grant is one of the developments that has had less help with repairs and with the safety and security problems. We have been offered interest doors about a couple of years ago, and we do not have them yet. Our doors are very bad. Our plumbing is out of this world. Some of the walls are caving in. And I would just like to know, when it comes to, skilled trades and the capital funds and the figures that I've seen or heard about up there, I don't see anything being done.
Again, I can't say specifically, I don't know off the top of my head exactly what is included in the capital plan at Grant Houses. But again, I would commit to, as part of the capital planning process moving forward, we will be visiting Grant Houses. We will be meeting with the residents there. You listed a lot of needs at the development, and we're going to need your help to prioritize those needs. I know you mentioned specifically safety and security. Grant Houses is actually fortunate enough to be one of the Viper locations where there is NYPD cameras and presence watching those cameras. So there's a positive with regards to that. But again, there are, Grant, like a number of our developments, the capital needs far exceed the available funding. So as part of the effort this summer, we're going to need you to help us prioritize that and figure out how exactly we should apply the limited resources.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Allen. Ms. Vieta Moore, followed by Ms. Barbara G. Barber. Ms. Moore? Ms. Barbara G. Barber, followed by Ms. Diana Blackwell.
God, as it's going, and I wouldn't miss this today, this shall be my last one. Let me just mix you all up a little bit here real quick. Where is Yuka and Miss Stewart and Leroy? Don't play. Detective Chino? Tell the commander the colors are coming back on at Drew. You will not come into Drew Hamilton. This is a setup. 11 o'clock at night? Don't try it. Now, Rosie, Giuliani and Franco sent me in 1996 to represent the Housing Authority. Moving from welfare to work, and I broke my suitcase down bringing this information. All right. Now, who here could tell me the closing date for Drew Hamilton House? Anybody here? And one of the reasons why I'm saying this is because we are infested with bed bugs and roaches and mice. Any morning you go outside and you will see 5 and 6 mattresses and box springs at our drop site. Okay? Now you say that the 21 state and city developments are for the Section 8. Citibank / Wells Fargo. They want their tax. And at Drew, we was slated for 525. As of 3/14, 286. Now we are up to 276 thus far. With total disrespect from Mixed Finance, who represents and searches us and try to treat us like we're nothing, to get our bank accounts so we can pay more taxes. So what's going to go on? Now let's move on down to safety and crime. Is the safety director here? Now how can we, Rosie, install cameras and talk about the doors when the fire department comes and break our doors down? And then we talk about those three components must work together. Many of our residents do not have home phones, so they use cell phones. Who's here from Capital Project? Go back to the drawing board and see how you're going to be able to hook up the intercom system with, hello? Cell phones. And lastly, let me say this to you residents. Take your clicks and click it in the right place to get NYCHA to be in compliance with all residents' needs. So now, you say Section 8 at the 21 state and city developments. I'm going to leave this thought with you. Why was so many of them evicted from Drew Hamilton and returned to the shelters? Now the lady, I see she going talking about rent. Ms. Gilliard, did y'all have the hearing yet on this flat rent? When did you have it? And wherever she is, tell her that there must be a hearing on this new flat rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Ms. Diana Blackwell, followed by Jonathan Gardenhire.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My subject is on repairs and replacement. My question is, where are the funds that was acquired to take care of the 21 state and city developments that came under mixed finance? The reason is because when will our needs be accurately assessed so that we can have the right repairs in our development? We signed off so that Citibank could give us the additional money. We know it's another bank now, but we have never gotten the repairs that was promised since 2011. I'm sorry, 9/11. So I'd like to know, where is the money? Who has assessed what we need? Can we have it done? And can we get a time schedule? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwell. So we'll have someone please come and take Ms. Blackwell, her specific comments, so that we can follow up with her on that. Jonathan Gardenhire, followed by Pearl Jackson Herbert.
My name is Jonathan Gardenhire. I'm the Vice President of the Resident Association at Smith Houses, and I'm also a member of Good Old Lower East Side. I have many residents that would have loved to come and give their feedback. Most of them have jobs and could not make it. With NYCHA's new interest in real resident engagement and what that means, looking around this room, Manhattan has 102 developments with more than 53,000 apartments. So I apologize to whichever elected official spoke, Robert Rodriguez, but this is not a good turnout. It's not. There should have been more meetings and opportunities for NYCHA residents to really begin to understand how NYCHA is run. As a younger person, I understand how complex any sort of communication has become with the increase of social media and technology. There's no doubt that there's been a tremendous shift in the overall attitude at NYCHA, and I commend the new chair for that. But there's a lot more that needs to be learned about how to engage with residents on all levels. And as someone said earlier, the effort is going to be there, but it should have been here already.
Thank you, Mr. Gardenhire, for your comment. Pearl Jackson Herbert, followed by John D. Norval. Ms. Herbert?
Hi, Pearl Jackson Herbert from Isaac Houses. My comment is about, we're one of the developments that has been hands-on in the future as far as financing and getting cameras associated and stuff like that. But because we're a good housing complex that's hands-on, we don't want to be pushed to the side about a lot of up-and-coming, I would say, progress in development far as getting new things, appliances, and other repairs done. So my comment is about that we have cameras, but we are wanting to get more cameras officiated inside our buildings. So my question is, because of these developments that's coming forth, we don't, like I said, we don't want to be pushed aside. We want to be hands-on on a new development and what's being processed in the future. So I want to know, how are we able to get that done and for the residents to be informed much better hands-on in the near future?
So relative to your specific question about cameras, can someone answer that, please?
So as you indicated, Isaacs is fortunate enough to have had some allocations in CCTV and layered access and has had significant amounts of work there.
Yeah.
That, of course, is not precluding us from continuing to make other improvements at Isaacs. Actually, Isaacs is one of the developments that's on the Bond B list, so we'll be getting significant improvements in terms of facade work. Should you be seeking, sounds like you're seeking additional funding for more CCTV work. As I said before, we have the contracts now in place so that when we get allocations, we can quickly make those necessary improvements. Right now, most of our CCTV and layered access improvements are funded through the City Council. So I would say at this point, I would continue to lobby your City Council member for funding for that particular development.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Herbert. Thank you, Ray. I only have one speaker slip in my possession, so if there are other speaker slips, could someone please bring them forward? In the meantime, we have John D. Norval.
Yes. Hello, I'm Dr. John Derek Novell of Abraham Lincoln Houses. And several things I've looked at this plan with, and it's just making my head spin. This business with flat rates, it has been mentioned by Barbara G. Barber and others that there should be a hearing on it. I've tried to understand just what's the difference with the 1 and 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, and from what I understand is that you're just going to raise all our rents, which is utterly ridiculous, but beyond $1,000 it seems. And we have people, I mean, you have to remember that only 30% of income can be taken still under the Brooke Amendment. But there are other issues. There are issues of resident rights that are not even put into this document. For instance, when I first got involved with this issue, it was because of this community service. I couldn't believe that I was in the United States and hearing that just because you lived in public housing, you lost your human rights, that you had to become a slave and also pay rent in order to live here. I have in my pocket here the Constitution of these United States, and we still have a 13th and 14th Amendment, madam. We still have a 13th and 14th Amendment in this country. I finished my college work and left my college work to begin the fight for our liberation and our freedom all over again. Now, guess what? I'm 60 years old, so I read by the thing that I'm now permanently exempt. But I will continue to fight you, and I will fight you for the next 14 years. I started 2000, 2014, I'll fight you the next 14 years. I'll fight you till I'm 90. If I live that long, God spares me. But this will end. We will have freedom in the United States, and not based upon where we live, that we have to be slaves. We will not have that. And the other thing we will not have is that you and many other electeds here tried to silence us last year with the mayoral election, when we were warning everybody that the mayor would not be able to change what Bloomberg had done in appointing people to the NYCHA board. Now, all the other cities in New York State, including Buffalo, elect theirs. Other cities in the state of New York elect theirs. But why is it that we can't elect ours? Again, Constitution passed us by. What happened to equal treatment under the law? So we can't vote for ours. But everybody else in the rest of the U.S. and Buffalo can vote for theirs. And Mayor de Blasio can't get these people off of the board. We warned people about that. Oh, yes, the news said, you're wrong, you're mistaken. The Daily News said, oh, surely you people are wrong. He'll be able to get them off the board. Surely he will. Well, are they off the board? Is May Lewis off the board? She got her 30 pieces of silver for betraying St. Nicholas houses and building that dreadful charter school. She's still on there, and so are others. We want the right to vote for the people who will be on that board, just like every other city in the state and in the country. And you better tell Cuomo to change this law to favor that, or he will have trouble with this election. It's about resident rights. And another thing, we talk about maintenance. You put on there, oh, you're working so hard for our maintenance, and oh, maintenance repairs will be quicker. Well, a little birdie just told me over the weekend that you intend on stopping maintenance workers who are on site on the weekend. Now, I have news for you. A couple of years ago, we had a terrible flood. See, I live in a short building. We had a terrible flood on the 6th floor because all the plumbing in 2175 was out of whack. We use our toilets, and the toilets keep backing up. So kids on the 6th floor trying to flush the toilet, the water came down, and the way the wonderful architects built our building, the wet wall is between the kitchen and the bathroom. So that water came down in our circuit breaker boxes all the way down to the 1st floor. I'll never forget that Saturday morning. The circuit boxes began to sizzle and fizz. People thought we were going to just blow up, go ablaze. So I don't know why my neighbors always call me, Norville, you got to do something. You got to do something. So my niece said, well, damn it, call the fire department. So they called the fire department. They cut off everybody's water. They cut off everybody's lights. It was Saturday. I said, well, I have to go to a meeting. I really didn't want to go to the Freedom Party, but I went because I couldn't hear my Saturday morning classics with Felix Hernandez. So I'm mad. So I went. And later on that evening, we on the 2nd and 1st floor, we got our water and our lights back, but nobody else did from the 3rd floor on up until Monday afternoon. So people went to work Monday morning without even having to take a bath. I think they were pretty upset about that. So now you're going to cut off the maintenance workers. And so what will we have when there's another emergency? Will we have to wait from Friday to Saturday to Sunday to Monday just because you want to save money? What kind of nonsense is that? And finally, let me finish. I was reading the first part, and you were talking about how you sold certain properties. And now these properties are going to be built with, how did you put it? You put it, the word that we hate so much, affordable housing. We've warned you all that it's low-income targeted housing, but I see how you play games with words. Affordable housing, then you said, oh, we have a development that will be for low-income people. So I assume that affordable housing means for upper-income people, not us. So you're continuing with the infill, so don't tell me you're not continuing with the infill. Just ask the people from Washington houses if they can still see beyond their grounds with the damn thing you're building there, or Jefferson houses. You're continuing with that infill mess, and we're going to continue with these problems, people, until we elect our own people on the resident board that will vote our issues and not the issues of Bloomberg with de Blasio in there. We are sick of this. We demand our human rights. And you know what? We're going to take you to court. We're going to run you through the courts. We're going to beat you up in the courts. We're going to beat you backwards and forwards till you're black and blue in the courts. And not even the boys in blue will be helping you.
Thank you,
because it will be within the law.
Thank you for your comments. So, Anne-Marie, could we talk a little bit about flat rent and maybe address some of Mr. Norvell's other comments?
So I've had a number of residents ask about the flat rent and about the public hearing. The significant amendment was released on May 30th. It covered both what Brian Clark talked about, which was the homeless preference, as well as the change in the flat rent policy. It was released on May 30th, also at the same time as the draft fiscal year 2015 annual plan. The review for both those documents are running concurrently, so these town halls cover both the draft plan as well as significant amendment, and the July 24th public hearing will also cover the flat rent as well as the draft annual plan. As I said, I'm available. I've been speaking to a number of residents this afternoon about specific questions in regard to their rent and their families. I'll stay till the end, until afterwards, for any additional questions. There was also a question in regard to community service, or a comment in regard to community service. Unfortunately, that is a regulation that we have to comply with. We absolutely agree with you. It's an unfunded mandate, but unfortunately it's something that we do have to comply with, and we can talk about it some more. And I think those were kind of the other questions that I've got. But we did take down your comments, and we'll work with the other departments to develop responses to them in the plan. Ms. Mendez, oh. I think you need to get to a mic so you can be.
Rosie, speak, because you need to ask about that rent.
That's exactly what I was going to ask about. I did not want to take up extra time from public testimony, and now that the public testimony is concluded, I really want to know, in December of 2013, when Ocean Bay Apartments was chosen by NYCHA to be part of the RAD pilot project, how was it chosen? What did NYCHA do? Were the residents involved? Were the elected officials of that area informed? Because in December of 2013, some decision was made to use that development as opposed to other developments, and I'd like to have that answer now.
Well, what I can tell you is that I believe they did, the Department for Development did run some analysis looking at which developments could possibly work for RAD. I know they did meet with the Resident Association of Ocean Bay, the development that was chosen for it. I don't know specifically if they met with the specific elected officials. I can certainly find out. Now, the way I believe the application works is that we needed to get in under the deadline for RAD to submit an application, but before anything is approved, there will have to be resident hearings as well as public hearings, as well as a significant amendment to the annual plan before that can really move forward.
Okay, and in December of 2013, I was still the chair of the Public Housing Committee, and I was not called as the chair to be informed that
I can certainly follow up with that.
Was being chosen, because
Okay.
I had to read it in plan like everyone else. I wanted to ask something else, but now I've forgotten.
Well, we'll be here.
Okay, so we're all going to stay here until, if anyone else should walk in.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if that question comes back to me, I'll
Oh, I believe we do have some more speaker slips, actually.
Great, more speakers, come on up. Well, you called them.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Dr. Norville, I don't know if you remember me. I was in your apartment a number of years ago. But I just wanted to address your question regarding response to emergencies on the weekends. So, so presently we do keep one maintenance worker per AMP. So it's not necessarily one per development, but one per kind of a cluster of units. And in some cases, if the development is large enough, we do keep one maintenance worker on. We are going to change that, but we are actually putting on. We're going to be taking the one maintenance worker who's assigned 8 to 1:30 off, but we're going to be putting on additional maintenance workers in actual cars covering the entire city. So we're hopeful that there won't be any drop off in service. So we're going to be closely monitoring that, and then we can always make adjustments if we feel that we need to. Okay. Okay.
So you might as well stay there.
Sure.
Because I just remembered my question. And it's about non-security capital. So I wanted to, thank NYCHA, because you actually did make a lot of progress with security capital and getting everything installed. And in the hearing that we had in December, the non-security capital was still lagging behind. And I just want to know, because I have projects from 2007 that are still lagging behind, and I think we've cured the issues, and I want to ensure that we fix them, because as you know, in my district last summer, we couldn't have a cooling center in one of my senior centers because the HVAC, there was a problem with the
Vladeck
HVAC.
houses, yeah.
Right. So, but it's a cooling center for everyone in that area. And there, Vladeck is also a NORC. So, is that and other non-security capital moving forward so that I can have my cooling center and my seniors can have their cooling center this summer? And I know non-security capital takes longer because of the procurement process. Has there been any way of looking at how we can fast track that the way we did the security capital?
Yeah, first of all, Councilmember, thank you for the compliment on the security progress. I would say, and I would agree with you, that the remaining issues still lie with the non-security. However, a number of the improvements, process improvements that we've implemented with regards to the security have also been recently, we're starting to roll those improvements out to the non-security developments. So putting in place contracts that'll then enable us to build projects very shortly after allocations are made. You may know the mayor has actually helped us with streamlining the OMB and Controller's Office approval process, which will have a tremendous positive impact on our ability to deliver those contracts. We have a number of both design and construction contracts in place so that we can immediately start to work on projects as we get those allocations. That being said, right, we are setting ourselves up to make significant improvements similar to the ones that you've seen in the security side to the non-security side. There still are a number of projects that have been around that we need to sort of push across the finish line, what I refer to as legacy projects that have had a wide variety of different types of problems that we now need to sort of close those projects out, finish them up the old way, and with all of the newer allocations that are coming in or that have come in recently, progress those in a much more expedited and efficient process that we have in place now.
Thank you. So under the old or the current procurement process for non-security capital, it takes, I know, a minimum of 2 years plus to try to get the money in place and the work done. So having OMB streamline it is helpful. So what are we talking about in terms of savings, in terms of months? Like how much sooner can we anticipate trying to see these projects completed?
So a couple of examples. One, the OMB and the Controller's Office approval process. You may recall a couple years ago at one of the council hearings on security, we laid out a plan for how we were going to advance all the CCTV and laid access projects. And we laid out specific dates for certain milestones. And you may recall that for the OMB Controller Office process, that was anywhere from a 4 to 5 month process where it was out of NYCHA and being processed by agencies outside of NYCHA. Very recently, some of those OMB CPs and controller registrations have been done literally in days rather than months. So I do believe the new processes can take significant weeks, if not months, off of the schedule. In addition to that, one of the other things that we've been stressing and has so far worked quite well is us getting a little bit of visibility into what the allocations are going to be. So as an example, I know council met recently and is kind of trying to nail down all of the capital allocations. And while they're not formally approved and they're not formally funding that's available to us, probably not until late September-ish, before that funding actually becomes available to us. In capital projects, we are already trying to advance those projects so that when the money does become available, we can immediately start to spend down on that. We've had some resident engagement meetings with residents who are getting allocations in the upcoming allocations. We're having those meetings now before the funding is actually available, so that when the money is there, we can actually roll right into either a more formal design or a construction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Herrero. I'm very hopeful that these projects will see the kind of advantages that the security cameras have seen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last thing that I would say in addressing Dr. Norvell is that there is no infill projects. There is no infill. We're not doing infill. Infill no longer exists. Rhonda Bennett is our next speaker, followed by Esperanza Camacho. Okay.
I'm sorry, just very quickly, I wanted to add to that with the infill. If you'll notice in the 2015 annual plan, all those infill sites were removed. They were under the direction of GM House and our new chair, Chair Shel Otoye. So those are not in the plan. In order to get them into the plan again, it would require public hearings and a significant amendment. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Rhonda Bennett, followed by Esperanza Camacho.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My concern is in my development, when you spoke about the Sandy, the evacuation plan, like a lot of developments don't have an evacuation plan for safety if there's an emergency. So I think housing should try to come up with some type of plan to get to each development to show them where they need to go and what safety measurements are put in place. That's one concern. Another concern is about our sponsored centers. When they had the discussion about the sponsored centers, it seems like it went out of the door, and a lot of the residents are concerned about rentals. It seems like no one is able to do a rental at all now in a sponsored center. So where are we to go if we want to rent something in our own development where we live at? Another concern is our maintenance work. Polo grounds, they're grounds, very dangerous. We have potholes that really need to be fixed. We have a lot of residents in wheelchairs and stuff, and we're constantly coming to the meetings and saying that, we need help with the grounds and stuff, and nothing is being done. So when you implement all of these projects, please think about polo grounds, because their grounds need to be worked on. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll talk about the sponsored centers and rentals, and I'll actually ask someone from my team to have a conversation with you, because NYCHA actually schedules the rentals at the sponsored centers. So my team will need to talk to you about that specifically. And maintenance work grounds, should we? Okay, so Brian Clark will talk about emergency preparedness.
So yeah, hi. We agree. Emergency preparedness. The key to that is planning ahead, and certainly NYCHA is committed to improving in this area. And in fact, we recently hired someone to be our director of emergency preparedness. Also, in addition, we've been working with OEM, and through our resident engagement program, we've actually gone through a train the trainer type program. And so I'll make sure afterwards I believe you said you're from Polo Grounds. Okay, so that with Polo Grounds, that they're going to reach out to the tenant association there. One of the things that they're thinking about doing is if possible to add this as a component of to the family days. To provide information there as well. It's kind of aligning with with OEM's program of Ready in New York. Okay.
And so I'm going to have someone come over and talk to you about the grounds. Okay. The centers, right, look to your, what is that, your left? Mr. Williams will talk to you. Okay, so Esperanza Camacho, followed by Ethel Velez.
Which one you want me to go to? Oh, gosh. As you can see, I'm not a speaker, so I saved myself for the last. I've been to one round table. We're not going to go into that. Since I heard about the Fourth Amendment freedom of speech, let me start. I'm from the Corsi Senior Citizens Complex, 117th Street. We're screaming because the elevators are constantly being repaired and stuck. We have seniors in wheelchairs. The other day, I was stuck in the elevator in the latter part of June. Talking about walking up with walkers, groceries. This is ongoing. And I've been in that building since 2010, so that's not like a million years. It's gotten better in 3 years, but the people, as many have stated here, I admire them for saying that, will not participate or come to meetings. You pay rent, they don't come to the meetings. So I don't know. The management tries, and we go to meetings, we change time schedules that had nothing to do with the elevators getting stuck between floors, people being pulled out. Thank God I wasn't pulled out. But these are seniors who can't walk, can't go shopping, get their groceries. I can't go to church because I don't know if the elevators are going to be running when I get back, so I stay home sometimes. It's just annoying. So when is this going to be resolved? When something serious happens, because these are seniors in their 60s, 70s. What's going on? 30 years, they're 30 years old type of elevators. It's time for input. And the key here is repair. They send people to repair who don't know nothing about repairing. And that's, if this year you're going to send people who are going to do internship type of repairing, you send an overseer to see what are they doing. Because every 15, 20 minutes, every 2 days, every 3 days, this whole weekend, Saturday and Sunday, kapulch, out. All holidays, out. Hey, what do you want, somebody to pass out in the elevators? So this is the complaint of all the seniors that I speak for in that building and people who are not seniors in there because they will not participate or come to meetings. Okay. It has nothing to do with speaking another language. They have interpreters there and they still won't function. So that's the complaint of the senior complex. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. So as I said previously, one of my areas of responsibilities are elevators. And I'm going to be in Manhattan, tomorrow morning. And so I'm going to come by, tomorrow to Corsi, take a look at your elevators with our director of our elevator program. Okay, so I'll get your information afterwards and swing by and speak with you while I'm there. Okay?
Thank you. Ethel Velez?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I say to the residents, it's wonderful that you were able to come out here during this time. It's very heartbreaking, the fact that we've changed the times and we have this word that we use, resident engagement, and yet the residents are engaged in so little of what goes on. The infill, which we talked about, it's not going to be called infill, but the process on one level is still going to go on. We have to be very scared about where we're living at right now. We are the new frontier because there is no more land. And our land is going to become that land. This process right now is a farce because how many people here really know what the 1 and 5 year plan is? How much do you know about the 1 and 5 year plan? We come to these meetings so that you go through the process to say that you had the meeting, but yet folks come out of here not understanding what went on. This meeting becomes a place for us to vent on some of the things that are going on in our developments. You need to come out more. Moving to work, we've been talking about for now almost 10 years. Be very scared. The part of moving to work that we were very scared about was you live in public housing for 5 years and they have the right to tell you to move. Be very scared of that. No matter what part of it that housing want to use, they could always implement it when a new mayor or a new administration come in. What we do not know is that we have not organized enough. Our leaderships are failing us on so many levels. We have to wake up, and I'm not sure how that should happen. But if you're living in public housing, which is now affordable, we don't know when it left being low income, but now we're affordable, and our rents are going to be based on everybody's rent who's coming into our community, as we have sustained these communities for so many years. All I can say to people here is that they need to go home and they need to organize. They need to organize more than we've ever organized before, because we are at the high risk at this point of losing our development, losing our homes. They've come up with all kinds of language that leads to displacement. People have to be very, very afraid, because public housing is not going to be what we know as public housing for the next generation.
Thank you, Ms. Velez. I will now read into the record a comment from a resident who preferred not to speak for himself. However, I would also like to announce that I have no more speaker slips. So if there are additional, I see the council member would like to provide another comment, and I see some speaker slips coming forward. But in the meantime, this is a comment from Hector Pizarro from Stanley Isaacs Houses, and what he wanted placed into the record is that when residents call the CCC for repairs, they get a date that can be weeks away. Mr. Pizarro suggests that when residents in 504 apartments call the CCC, the repair is expedited. Thank you, Mr. Pizarro, for your comment. Thank you. The next speaker, Barbara J. Williams from Polo Ground Houses. Ms. Williams.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Barbara Williams. You know, I wasn't going to say anything today because I know that I have an upcoming meeting that I've invited a few of your people to. But my question today is this, or our concern in Polo Grounds. You know, we have residents who have not had paint jobs for many years. And they call in and ask for one because now they're told that, well, you can now get, you know, apartment painted. They call in and they come in and they said that now you can't get but one room painted. I just had an experience with one of my residents who called in for an apartment to be painted. She got a kitchen painted. Then they said that she can only get one wall in the living room painted because plasterers had been in previously and made some repairs to her wall. If she's asking for a complete apartment painting, how is it then the work orders changed to only address the kitchen and the living room? And I'd also like to speak on the fact about the maintenance. Polo Grounds is the tallest development in Niger. We have 30 floors. Not having maintenance workers on the weekend is horrible. I live on the 19th floor. And just 1 or 2 summers ago, someone left home and left a washing machine running. That person lived on the 23rd floor. Every floor below the 23rd floor was flooded, including mine, because I was on the same line as this person. One person driving around the city of New York to answer emergencies is totally inefficient. It is not going to work, And my suggestion is for you guys to leave it as it is. We need our maintenance workers. We need them.
Hi, ma'am. Ma'am, I just want to clear this up. There are going to be maintenance workers working on the weekend to address emergency issues. After 1:30, right now, after 1:30 on Saturdays and holidays and Sundays, ESD has maintenance staff assigned to areas, and they're in cars and they move from development to development. That's the way that we respond to emergencies at night. That's the way we respond to emergencies after 1:30 on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. So what we're going to be doing going forward is we're going to put more ESD maintenance workers on from 8 to 1:30, okay, covering the city. So there's going to be maintenance workers on to respond to emergencies. So I want to apologize if I confused anybody with the way I explained it before, but that's the way it's going to be moving forward. It's not one maintenance worker. The other issue is, and we can look into the specifics of your apartment with the with the paint issue, but one of the things I had mentioned before was about the money that the de Blasio administration was able to allow NYCHA to retain that money that would normally go to NYPD, approximately $52 million, and this is being used towards vendor work orders, to address paint and floor tile. So a lot of these older vendor work orders, and I kind of showed you the stats, and it shows that these work orders have been open for quite some time. Moving forward, we're going to be able to paint a lot more apartments. So the issue with your apartment, and I'd have to look into the specifics, might have been that associated with the plaster repair, there was the final piece is to paint that wall, but we'll take a look in the system. There's probably an open vendor work order to paint your entire apartment, which is done on contract. So we'll look into that, ma'am.
Well, I don't want to personalize it because actually it wasn't mine. I'm the president of the Resident Association.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, ma'am.
And when I get this type of feedback from a resident, I bring it forward.
Okay.
Okay.
I gotcha.
And it is not just one apartment. I use that as an example.
Okay.
However, this is going on throughout the development. So we need this to be addressed. Residents should not be told that you are going to get certain repairs to your apartment, and the workers come in and they have a totally different work order. People are moving their furniture in the middle of the floor, and when they get there, oh, we're only going to paint a wall. Oh, this room is not connected to the other room, so therefore the living room and the dining room and the kitchen, this is all where at least where we live, it's like one big room. And it's just unfair to the resident to have them prepare for something that's just not going to happen. People are staying home from work, and they just can't do it several times. I mean, they're on the job. They're staying home from theirs, but they have to continue to pay the rent. Okay. So let us continue to work with the residents. Let's be more engaging, per se. If you ask us to do something, there's a second side of that. You've got to hold up your end also.
Agreed.
That's it.
Very fair. Very fair statement. Okay.
Are there any additional speaker slips? Okay. At this time, what I did want to, just on the heels of the conversations that we've been having around resident engagement, I did want to make sure that I didn't leave here without saying that those comments, are not being told to folks who are, unhearing or who don't understand that NYCHA, and I'll use the words of our chair, needs to reset the relationship with residents. And hopefully, if you've not seen, you'll see, relatively quickly that the chair has been out a lot, having conversations with elected officials, having conversations with resident leaders. She's had a number of conversations and convened a number of meetings with NYCHA staff, She's looking at staff who have been working with the agency for very long periods of time to staff and convene meetings with staff who've been here only a short period of time. And, she's called it her listening tour. And those will, of course, continue, and they will continue. And she's doing it because we've heard you talk about the need for us to do things differently. And so as we talk about resident engagement, and you heard, a number of staff come up here today to talk about the need for real resident engagement, right? And we heard Ethel Velez talk about not just convening meetings where people have an opportunity to vent, but to convene meetings where people feel confident that some of their concerns, those that we can certainly implement, we will if we can. And so that work will continue, and we, would like to continue and will continue to have these sorts of conversations and other conversations with you so that we can, as again the chair mentioned, reset the relationship. So again, NYCHA has committed to being here till 6 p.m. Are there any, you have another comment? Okay, please come to the microphone.
I've noticed.
Please state your name again.
My name is Rhonda Bennett, Polo Grounds. I've noticed that a lot of residents have been receiving community service letters. But the only thing about that is when they receive their community service letters, these are people that's either was out of work before and they're now working, and they submitted their paperwork on the yearly income review, but y'all still sending them sending the letters out for them to do community service, or you sending letters to people that's receiving disability. So my concern is really on the inside of NYCHA, are y'all really looking into will the residents submit? If we're submitting letters from disability or submitting letters stating that we're working and you getting a W-2, how are y'all still sending community service letters to people?
Right, so what I would suggest is that resident please go back to the property management office. You're right, if that is indeed the case, those things should not happen. And if they are exempt and they fall into one of the categories that are exempted, then they won't have to conduct the community service. But that's something that we will certainly take a closer look at. No, council member?
You have exemption forms. We've known about this, which Judith Goldner was here, and Rosie, you know about this too, that there were exemption forms. What happened to those exemption forms? Why don't you let the exemption forms, why don't you let residents know about those forms? Why don't you put them into the record? Why don't you put them into the yearly plan and that? A lot of residents don't know there's a P form and a C form, a D form. It's a form for disabilities, miss, do you know? There's also a form for caretakers for disabilities. But you wouldn't know that if NYCHA didn't tell it to you. We spent time trying to send as many of those exemption forms that we could to all of the residents of all the 5 boroughs. Why can't you let the residents have their forms?
Thank you for your comment. So we would love, and in fact, NYCHA did a lot of work to, in fact, increase the exemptions. And so there isn't any reason why we wouldn't want to let the residents know about it. But what I think I hear you saying is that we need to do a better job at that, and so we'll take a look at it. Councilmember Mendez?
Thank you. And there are some residents that want to speak. I don't know where they sign up at. So, if someone can.
Ms. Price will get the slips and bring them to them.
Okay. So, my question, and I know you're not going to have this answer today, is I wanted to know how many people did show up at these afternoon borough hearings in all the different boroughs, and I wanted to know how many people had showed up at the borough hearings when they were in the evening in the other boroughs. I know there was an issue raised about cost savings from the chair, Shola Alatoye, at the city council hearing. so that if there is expenditures that the authority is encountering, and we can figure out how to have some cost savings for the authority, but still have some evening hearings for the public in each borough. Okay? Thank you. There's a question which might be done individually about the tenant watch stipends, that people haven't gotten them. And I know that's state funding, and I don't know if that's still in place, but maybe that someone can help that tenant now, because it's been several months and they haven't received the state funding. Regarding the community centers being open late at night, you mentioned Cornerstone, and so I wanted to know if all of your community centers are now under the Cornerstone program, or there are still some NYCHA-run centers. I know there's still some NYCHA-run senior centers, but I don't know if there's still any NYCHA-run centers. And if there is NYCHA-run community centers and the Cornerstone centers, are all of them going to be open till 11 at night, or just the Cornerstone? You mentioned 70 centers in the program, and so I didn't know which ones they were, but I'd like to have that delineated and a list be made available to the City Council for us to know which are the 70 that are currently in the Cornerstone program. And I just wanted to, there was a lot of comments about the painting, and so I want to actually thank NYCHA for thanking me, but it's really a collective in the City Council that we were able to put some funding into NYCHA for painting this year. We put money previous years, 10 million the past 2 years, for repairs to deal with the backlog. And that is a collective effort from the entire council with our speaker. But I wanted to raise the issue that at one of my hearings a year or so ago, there was a lot of testimony from residents talking about how paint was being watered down. And what I'm hearing now is that, you know, in certain places, I don't know if it was from when these paint jobs were done several years ago, but that it seems, and there was sufficient evidence that was provided to my committee that it was happening in certain developments, that paint was being watered down. And then last, what I wanted to say was, I want to thank NYCHA for retweeting my tweet to come to the hearing and speak, but you didn't retweet any of my other retweets about we need affordable permanent housing. You didn't retweet my tweet about we need evening hearings. You didn't retweet my other tweet about making sure that there is resident engagement. So I like for you to retweet all my tweets. That's all I'm saying, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. So I'll start with the community centers, and we'll certainly get you the information. But to answer your question, there are 70 Cornerstone community centers, and we'll get you the list. And there remains 24 NYCHA-operated community centers and 33 NYCHA-operated senior centers. The Cornerstones will be open for 7 days a week during the summer until 11 o'clock p.m. And we're still in discussions around having the NYCHA-operated community centers open until 11 p.m. as well. And we should know relatively quickly.
I just wanted, since we have time,
sure.
I just want to talk to the residents and say you need to keep an open mind about having these centers open. Parents are afraid to send their kids out to play on the development grounds. There is, in this city overall, a lot of random shootings, and if we can provide a center to be open that the kids can go into, then we just need to ensure that they're safe while they're in the center, but you have to keep an open mind to that, because at the end it provides a place for kids to meet, have more friends, and have a safe outlet to engage in recreational activities in an indoor space. So I think residents should just, like I said, keep an open mind and try to work with the authority on supporting some of these initiatives.
Thank you so much. Couldn't have said it better myself. So Um, We will get you the information on the, or someone else wanted information on the resident watch stipend, is that right? Okay, so we'll make sure that you get the information on the resident watch stipend. And then there was a question about paint. Anyone here can answer paint, or should we answer it different? Another time? Paint.
My name is Louis Ponce, Vice President of Operations. I haven't spoken tonight. So the paint being watered down is something that we can't really do because the paint that we use is oil-based paint. It's not water-based paint. But what they're referring to is that it's not covering up the paint that was there before. So our paint contracts typically have a one-coat paint or a two-coat paint job, so that we should make sure that it covers the right. If it's paint that is going to bleed through, if the old color bleeds through, then we should put two coats on that paint. So maybe that's the issue. So maybe if you have the specifics.
I will go back to the hearing and back to our notes and try to find it, because what I was being told is even when it was the same color, it was like bleeding through, and that they were, well, I don't know if that part got information that could really document it, but I was being told that the good paint was being sold, and then they were pocketing that money and then buying cheaper paint and using that in the residence apartment. And so, some of the watered down thing, I got some information will lead me to believe it's true. I don't think it was widespread. I don't know, maybe it was just in a certain development or two. I don't know, but it was an issue, and residents are still complaining about the quality of the paint. So I just want the authority to look into that, because when you use good quality paint, it will last longer than the 3 years that it's supposed to last.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we also have, we inspect a random sample of the paint to make sure that it meets the specifications as required by New York State. So I will also get involved as another department to make sure that we are not slacking up on that, and that we continue to do that to hopefully avoid that switching if that's the allegation.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you both. Next speaker, Olivia Harris.
Good afternoon. I'm not accustomed with the procedure, but I suppose I can go on. Okay, my name is Olivia Harris, and unfortunately at this point in time, I'm not a member of any public housing because I'm looking for affordable housing. I'd like to know where are the affordable housings for us seniors who have worked in this city over 40 years paying taxes. I have been on the waiting list of the New York Public Housing. 2009, I was certified for Section 8. That was closed. Now, I am still seeking and waiting for affordable housing. I have signed up with lotteries, signed up HPD, and I'm come to the opinion of the people on many of the websites who are blogging and saying this is a scam. All the interviews I have gone to, I can show you where I have taken paper after paper after paper. I can show you right here in my folder. I go back where I have to bring paper after paper after paper, more paper, to see whether I, am qualified for any of the affordable housing in this city. Now, I like to know, in the New York Housing Authority, as I say again, where are the affordable housing for seniors? I would like to know, because maybe I'm not looking in the right places. You have a high crime wave in your New York Housing Authority, some of your places. Well, why don't you get rid of the criminals and make room for all of the seniors who are decent, who have worked in this city, paid taxes, but yet I have a history of 6, 7 long years paying my rent on time. My daughter right here is a college student with 1 more year in college. I have been there supporting her. I have paid her way through school, private school, all of these years. But when I need help in this city for affordable housing, nobody is there. Now you got all the crime waves. You want to know how to get rid of the crime in all of these public housings that you have out here? Get rid of the criminals. That way the kids can play in peace, grow old people can walk around. And I thought there was some type of regulations or rules for people living in public housing that if you have this happening in your household, then you're out. Well, I need to know where it is not being enforced because I need somewhere to stay. And I'm tired of the runaround that people get in this city. We are being pushed out. Some of us, many of us in some communities are seemingly to be pushed out. When I go to the housing association, I see people shaking hands. Congratulations, you got a new apartment. They've been here 50-something years, 60 years. I've been here, my whole family been here about 300 generations. So where is my housing?
So, ma'am, I did present before and talked about, some of the affordable housing issues in New York City here, and certainly it's a crisis. And when you look at our waiting list for public housing, there's over 250,000 people on that waiting list right now. I know this isn't anything that you necessarily want to hear, but it's the reality. It's the truth. And when you look at the number of apartments that we turn over, we only turn over, approximately 9,000 apartment units a year, and 3/5 of them are targeted for transfers. So when you're looking at the reality of the number of apartments that are available, for rent through our, for applicants who aren't current, NYCHA residents, there aren't many apartments that turn over in a year. I know that there are, and I know that's not necessarily what you want to hear. We do have some senior developments. Afterwards, I'll get your information, and I'll try and provide you with whatever status I can. But the reality is that there's affordable housing is a precious commodity in New York City here. There is a lot of people on our public housing waiting list. Obviously, 250,000. As you said, our Section 8 is closed right now. And we have 125,000 people on that closed list. There are tools on HPD's website for helping to find affordable housing opportunities, so you can take a look there. And what I'll do is afterwards, I can get your information, and I'll try and get you an idea of where you are with us. Okay?
Well, I understand what you're saying. What is your name, sir?
My name is Brian Clark, Clarke.
Mr. Clark, I thank you, and I understand what you're saying. I'm extremely computer literate, having worked on computers for over 40-something years. I have been on all the websites. I have played the game, the right way. And I understand there are a lot of people looking for affordable housing. I've been there. I've been to the interviews. I can show you, as I say, I've been to 3 or 4 interviews. I have lists of papers that I had to bring in that had nothing whatsoever to do with renting an apartment, and it's frustrating because I see a lot of us trying to get apartments, and we're not there anymore. We're being pushed over on the side, and that's reality. It has nothing to do with anything at all. It's the reality of it. And thank you.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, and congratulations to your daughter. Sir, did you have a comment?
Hi again. Once again, my name is Jonathan. And I'm just sitting here listening to you guys and realize that there's really an issue because NYCHA doesn't really have a voice. You guys said that infill's not going to happen, but then there's this affordability crisis, and then there's the mayor's housing plan, which is going to bring some 80,000 new affordable units. So if NYCHA's going to say that infill's not going to happen, but it's very clear to the entire city that the mayor's looking at NYCHA land on places to build, then NYCHA really needs to start retweeting Rosie Mendez and saying that we want all affordable units if they're going to build somewhere. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, and we thank you for that. And unfortunately, there isn't anyone from our Department for Development here today that can talk about, what plans
I can talk about it though.
Councilmember Mendez can.
Because I like to be fair, and when NYCHA says that infill is not going forward, what they mean is infill as developed under the Bloomberg administration, where they targeted 8 developments, is not going forward. At the end of the Bloomberg administration, they changed their infill plan and to be what I called refill. And they wanted, instead of doing an RFP, well, they were doing an RFP, but you had to submit a plan to the Housing Authority, and many of us had asked the Bloomberg administration to let de Blasio decide, and they actually did. So when we are hearing that there is a need for housing, then I am clear that Mayor de Blasio is looking at NYCHA land. I am hopeful, and I'm not 100% clear, but almost 100% clear that it will not be what Mayor de Blasio, what Mayor Bloomberg proposed. So I think it's still in flux. I think we will end up seeing proposals. It may be some of those 8 sites that were looked at before, and it may be many other additional sites. But how NYCHA land will get used to build real affordable housing, what we consider real for everyone, I think it's yet to be determined, and I think that's what this administration is going to be working on. And having said that, I think NYCHA has heard clearly that there is a need for more senior housing. 36% of the residents in public housing are seniors, and many of them want to transfer into a senior building. And there's, of course, like the woman who spoke earlier, who is a senior on a waiting list. And so I think that is something that has worked successfully before, when the Housing Authority has built a senior building within the development grounds. And we just need to find the subsidies and the funding to make that happen, because the programs that did do the senior housing and the state subsidies don't exist anymore. So I hope I've answered the question and everybody's happy with my answer. No comments from the NYCHA team? So I guess it's accurate. Okay, thank you.
That was my final speaker slip. Are there any additional speaker slips? Again, it is 5:33. NYCHA has committed to being here until 6 o'clock. And so if at any point there are any additional questions, we will certainly be here to address them.